Okay, today we're continuing our look at the project's billing screens, and this time we're focusing our attention on the invoices screen. So the general purpose of this screen, as you might imagine, is to give you a very quick summary and overview of all the invoices on this project at this moment. And we have some very flexible features here. And the first thing I want to point out is that besides the obvious grid of data you can see here, each one of these invoices does in fact actually allow us to not only see the actual invoice by clicking on the invoice number, which you can see is hyperlinked, but also if we just want to look at some of the numbers, we can actually click on the small blue information icon to the left, and we will get a very useful pop-up that gives us all kinds of detailed information about the invoice, its date, when it was created, how long it's been outstanding, when its due date was, any messages that might have been on there, and then a summary of all the different numbers that went into the invoice, and then also some historical numbers about the state of the project before this invoice happened. And we can, in fact, even see in this invoice, for example, we have $500 worth of cap fees. Well, what are cap fees? Cap fees are basic service time that is subject to caps. And if we say, oh, well, that doesn't seem right. Well, let me see what time entries are those. Well, we can actually click on any of these three, and we can see any of our cap fees, our no cap fees, which would be things like expenses that are not reimbursable, or additional services, or we can actually see our reimbursables. So we can actually click those and just get a very simple list of all the time that went into that number. So in addition to that breakdown, we can also see very easily, well, are these invoices fully paid off? And this checkbox is automatically handled for you by the program as you enter transactions, which we will cover in a future video. So we can see at a glance if they're fully paid or not. Again, the date of the invoice, our method, whether it was an hourly invoice, a stipulated sum, percent of construction, unit cost, or any of the options that are there. And then we can see some of these numbers out here as well. So we can see very easily how much we have in basic service time, additional service time, or reimbursable expenses. The total amount of the invoice, how much is still due, and again this all updates automatically as you enter payment transactions. And then if we want to do things like listing them, we could actually select individuals to do that. That's not used too often, but it is there if you do need it. And then also, very quickly, we have a from and a to field. Well, what are these for? Well, these actually function as a filter. So in the event that we have a very long list of invoices, perhaps this project has been running for many years, you might have a list longer than one page, and it's difficult to find the one you're actually looking for. Well, no problem. So you can actually put in a filter here, and if we want to do an example of this, we can filter everything for this year, and we can see it cut it down to only one, because there is only one invoice this year. So we do have that functionality as well. Also, the last thing I want to cover is two things actually. Your totals, so you'll see a very simple total of each of those sections at the bottom, as well as how many total payments on the entire project have happened up to this point, and how much is still outstanding on the project up to this point. And the actual last thing I want to look at and point out to you is these three links we have at the bottom. So these are actually inline reports. So if we want a statement of this project, we can click that link, and in a moment it'll compile the data and it will present us with a report. And there it is. So we can see on this particular project all the outstanding invoices. And we can see here's a complete list of all the invoices, and we can see that most of them do not have anything remaining, and we have one that does. So effectively, it's the same grid of information, but in a printed format that you can disseminate to project managers or the customer themselves if they request that. And then we also have the client statement, which is actually the same thing as the print statement, except that this will do what the statement does, but it will pull invoices for all of this billing client's projects. If they have multiple projects with you, this will give you a statement and it will cover all of their projects. And then finally we can see a summary. And this is just a very basic summary of how much is on each phase of the project, and in this case it's in terms of basic services. If we also had an additional services on any of our invoices, we would see a section for that as well as for expenses. But we don't in this case. So we just see a very simple summary of all the information pertinent to this project. And that is the invoices screen. In a future video, we will continue our look at the other three screens, starting with transactions.